Right, you want to see the machine room? I'll take you down. The stairs are a bit dangerous, so be careful how you go. This is the end of the shop here. Now the stairs have got a bit of wear on, and I'm afraid it's a bit oily because we've been moving machines. There's a big patch of oil there. Be careful not to tread in it because it will rot the soles of your shoes. I'm going to clear it up in a moment. Right. Now this is the machine room where all the presses are, where the work was done. Right, this is the high one there. Oh, it's still running there. The way it works, because the rollers are carrying the ink, and you put the paper you want to print here, a big pile of it, and the sucker will actually pick it up. So the printed work goes on the other side. You can actually see the last job. Petty cash vouchers, they're four up, if you like. That's what we sell in the shop. That was the last job, still there. So there's 6 presses here. 2 are historic. This one is what they call the Golding. That's a hand-feed treadle machine, and this one you actually feed by hand.
How old is it?
About over 100 years. It printed the Suffragettes leaflets, and my grandmother was one of the Suffragettes, and she made my grandfather print all their leaflets and posters, but she wouldn't let him charge for it. But my grandfather didn't like that because, you know, he wasn't particularly. He was more sort of a right wing than my grandmother, who was left wing, but he had to do as he was told, and he printed. So we're now in history as the Suffragettes printers. That was discovered by a local historian, Rosemary Taylor, quite a few years, about 20 years ago. She started researching it, and of course the printer had to put his name and address on the leaflets, and when she found the old Suffragettes literature, because that was Arbor and Co printers, and that's how then she started the research. But the old grandmother, once she got a vote, she just got on with her life, and she never spoke about, you know. And it's a bit of a shame, really, because all these historians say to me, your grandmother must have told you all about the suffragette days. And she didn't. The only thing I ever got from her, when, you know, back when the Crays were sort of ruling the manor, the Crays had thrown someone in the canal. And I was saying about this, and my grandmother says, oh, when we were in the Suffragettes, we threw this man in the canal and we were pushing him down with a pole. And that's all I ever heard from my grandmother about her suffragette days.
So can you tell us a bit about the shop, how it was opened?
Yeah, the shop itself was started in 1897 by my grandfather, but he was then a box maker. And of course he started, you know, making cardboard boxes and packaging, but of course then the package, people wanted printing on it. So instead of sending it out to be printed, he decided to get a press and start to print them. And in the end, the printing became more of the business, overtook the box making, and so he was more of a printer than the box maker. And of course the business ran survived right through the First World War. You know, my grandfather said spoke about standing in the door, seeing the Zeppelins coming over, and then it gradually built up through, you know, till the second one. And by then there were 6 presses here. It was a very busy printers. We had contracts printing for the government, and one machine here, what they call the Heidelberg, that's made in Germany, and that was delivered in the summer of 1939. Then the war started before we paid the Germans for it. So we had to give the money for it to the British government, but whether they gave it to the Germans 5 years later when the war ended, I don't know. Also, the company also ran a toy shop. The toys stopped in the 1970s when the British toy trade, it just broke down. People say it did a way of saving. They put so much money onto what we called it a club. So the money was on a book with their name and had a card with how much they got, and they could see, you know, I've got £10 here, and the child's birthday comes in, and they say they buy a £5 toy, and that came out of the money they paid. It was a way of saving up for toys. A Christmas club, you know, with hundreds of people on them. And then the big toys, Christmas Eve, like dolls, prams and pedal cars that they couldn't hide in the house, we deliver, and I'd be going round in a van right till 2 o'clock in the morning Christmas Eve, delivering toys to all the... Oh, it was a...
So you were Santa.
I was really. You know, there's a man who, local man, he's about 50, and he's never forgiven me for ruining the secret of Father Christmas, because he was just going to bed Christmas Eve when he looked out the window and saw my blue comber van pull up outside and deliver his Christmas present. And he suddenly knew there was no Father Christmas, and he's never let me forget that 40 years on.
You were bringing the dream and breaking it at the same
Oh,
time.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
When did you operate the machine for the first time?
Well, I came probably when I was about 14, 15. But I came here up till because you had national service. You were called up for national service until I was called up for national service at the age of 18. And I went in the Air Force, and I said I wanted to be a pilot. Well, I said you can't be a pilot on national service. It's only 2 years, so you have to sign on. So I signed on for 8 years. And I was actually flying Lincoln bombers, but my father, who was running the place, got a disease called nephritis that attacks your kidneys, and dialysis wasn't invented, so he died, and I had to buy myself a type out of the Air Force in 1954 and run this place. And because my grandparents were still alive and had money for it, there was 6 men down here, 3 comps, 9. There was about 14 people working here, plus me aunt in the toys. So it was, someone had to run it. And that was the end of my RAF career.
You came back and you got married, or when did
I got married in 1959. That was, after I'd been here for a while.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, the thing is, when I was young, ladies didn't go to pubs on their own. The only place you could meet them was in religious churches, and I'm not holy, or dance halls. And that's where I met her, because the secret was, you see Strictly, the men have got an unfair advantage. When you're a ballroom dancer, you lead from the hip. Now I could take any of you now onto a dance floor and make you look like a professional by my lead. And that was the secret. You go to a dance. My friend Ron and I, we got the IDMA gold medal. We got gold medals in ballroom dancing, and you saw a pretty girl, like her. You took her for a dance, and once she's on the floor, she looked like a ballroom because you knew how. You made her look good, but she couldn't do it without you. And that's the way you got, and that's where I met my Ruby. Funny enough, East Ham used to have a whopping great Olympic-sized swimming baths. And in the winter, they used to put a floor over it and call it the Winter Hall. And you had a dance hall where 600 couples could dance. That's where I met her, I used to be, every week, Saturday night, we'd go, dancing. But that Winter Hall's gone now.
I'm interested as well in the history of the market.
Well, the market, I can remember it before the war as a child. At 8 o'clock at night, still flourishing, crowds of people, like hurricane lamps on their stalls. You're wading through white paper, and it was really successful.
When was it?
That was when I was a child before the war, but the market was still busy up to about 2004.
What kind of product could you find?
Anything in the market. There were characters. For instance, there was a man called Lou the Stocking Man. He used to sell that was when women didn't have tights. He used to have nylon stockings. And he used to rub his hands, smooth his hands with pumice stone, because he said, look at that lady. He put his hand inside the stocking, look, 20 denier everything, and he had to have his skin fine so he didn't lather them. And now he did nothing but sell ladies' stockings. There was they could buy anything, but now all you've got is people with day tickets, buying stuff. Most of it's made up in Spitalfields, and it's all the same. It's not the market it was. There was toy stalls, vegetables, everything. Eel stalls with live eels in buckets underneath. You remember how my grandfather had an old dog, and he come in with a whopping great eel in his mouth once, chewing away, that he pulled out the bucket under a stall up there. It was a living market. The whole area was a working area. The Coburn Road station, that's now closed, people at 8 o'clock, workers come streaming out that station, working here. Factories had hooters. They blow at 5 to 8, and then they blow again at 8, so only workers heard the hooter blowing, but because there had to be about a dozen hooters. In one of the side streets, Johnstown safes were made. There was massive, there was loads of trade. And at the bottom of Ford Street, there was a whopping great company called Compton's that used to make uniforms for armies and police forces all over the world. And every woman round here would work there as a machinist, and it was work. So a woman would send her children off to school, do her morning's work, come home at dinner time, feed her children, have her dinner, go back and do her afternoon's work, and nobody was out of work. Apparently in the 1900 they used to have the cows were actually in this big cow shed for milking, and apparently on Sunday they'd take them to graze in Vicky Park. But that was before my time. But the dairy was there until they knocked it down. But where the cows were, they put the floor in. It became let to it as a carpenter's workshop. But Dave Evans, you know, he was still selling his milk going around with a handcart. And there was another factory at the back, Sinclair's. They used to bake feathers for stuffing cushions and things. So when the poultry trade, I mean, all the feathers came in a sack, but of course they had to be baked and purified to kill all the bugs and fleas. And that was another factory that was working at the back. Another one there, John Simon's. They used to, as the big boats came into the docks, they used to provision them with all the food for the next voyage. There's masses of business out the back. Like you take this block, you had the end shop was Mrs. Green. She was an alteration tailor. You could buy her a dress, you know, and if it didn't fit you, she'd alter it perfectly. Next door to that, you had Albert Relay. Batteries, used to do batteries and things. And next to that was Sid Shaw. Now that was quite a character. He's a little Jewish grocer, a quiet little man, you know, got on with his life. And you know, he wouldn't think he'd say boo to a goose, but his friend Moisture came in once and he was talking about Sid. He said, "You know, Sid's a war hero." I said, "No, that's news to me. He never says anything." But apparently Sid was in the army in the war, and his regiment was going over to the second front in Europe, and Sid was very Jewish in appearance. You couldn't mistake it. And the CO sent for Sid and said, "You know, we're not taking you over there because if you're captured, you won't be a prisoner of war. You'll be in the gas chambers." And Sid said, "They're killing my people. It's more my fight than yours, sir." And he went and he got the military medal for bravery. But he never said a word. You know, he got on with his little shop and it's only if Fred hadn't told us, we'd never have known, you know. And then next door to that, you had the chemist. Then you had Yetta, a baker, and she could swear better than a docker. But a Jackie man break the bread, you know. And then next door to that was then a manufacturer's mail order. They used to make suits for men up to 80-inch waist, massive. I've seen customers come there so fat they couldn't get in the door when his Jack used to be measuring them on the pavement. Then you had us. Next door was Dr. Winch. Then you had Bill's Caff. Next door to that was Hurley Baker's radio shop, and on the corner was a laundrette. That was just this bit, you know. You had shops wherever you could buy anything in the